I developed some object which I called a group, and we studied there. And then I ended up with some nice game, and that was the 15 puzzle game. And still the game, we know how when we can solve and when we cannot solve, but still there are many problems related to that game, and people are very interested, and that is also one active research open problem. And if you are interested, then of course you can look in that. Now again, I'm coming back to the geometry part again, and now we'll explore something in geometry, and then again we'll go back in group theory and try to connect everything again. So if you have any question related to my last three lectures, please ask me, otherwise I will move on. Anyone, any question? So I assume that no question. So now I will share my slide. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yes. So today we are going very elementary thing which we have already seen in geometry. And I was looking the definition of polygons. Then I saw that in class 3 and 4 they teach what is a polygon. So let us go back and define them systematically and then go to the next step. So what is a plan? Plan is to discuss what do you mean by polyhedron or platonic solids. But before going to solids, I want to work in the shape in just plane. So I will define what is called a polygon. My mouse movement is just 1 minute. Right. So a polygon, it is just a closed plane figure made of several line segments and that are joined together, and the sides do not cross each other. Exactly two sides meet at every vertex. So for example, in picture, these are the examples of a polygon because I have taken three sides and made them, that gives you a polygon. I have taken many other line segment and did like that, and I got again an example of a polygon. But in another picture, if you see here, so this is not example of a polygon because this picture is not in plane. Yes, and now see this. This is also not a polygon because it is not a closed. So I'm saying that it should be closed also. That is a part of my definition, closed plane figure. So this is also not allowed. This picture is also not allowed. Why? Because I said I will make a plane figure using only straight lines. And of course, this line is not a straight, it is a curve. So this is also not allowed. And similarly, this type of things is also not allowed. This is not allowed. This is not allowed. So now I'm interested in defining what is called regular polygon. So what is a regular polygon? A regular polygon is one where all line segments are of equal length and the angle between two line segments is always same. So for example, if you take this triangle, this is called as an equilateral triangle. So you see that it is made of three line segments and all have a same length, and the angle between them is 60 degree, and all three angle is also same. So this is an example of regular polygons. For example, more examples. If you see, if you take four sides, then whatever is called square. Now, if you take a 5 sides, which has a 5 equal sides and angle is same, then whatever you get, that is called as a pentagon. And similarly, you get a hexagon, heptagon, octagon, and continue. So if you see this picture, then you see that you can construct for any number n, you can always construct a n-gon. So you can always construct a regular polygon, which I am calling as a regular n-gon. And it is not very difficult to find out that the angle between any two lines, or we call them as a edges, is exactly n minus 2 pi by n radians, which we have already seen in our geometry before when we started, I think, in class 7 and 8. So now some remark, there are actually infinite regular polygon, and for each positive integer n, there exists one and only one regular polygon. So question, can you give me a polygon of 3 edges, 2 different polygon? So answer is no. Similarly for any n, the answer is no. So now I want to see this definition in different way. So like just 1 minute. So I'm saying that polygon is just made of lines, intersections of line. So if I take like a line like this, another line like this, some line like this, then what I did, I actually took all points which are just one side of this line, line 1, and again line 2, line 3, line 4, 5. And the picture I got, that is my polygon. So basically polygon is made by intersections of line. So if I want to generalize this definition, then I can talk about object in R3, and I can say, okay, in case of plane you have taken lines, now I can take planes. And now I have a planes, I can intersect them, and then I can form some object. Now that is another definition, polyhedron. So now you know what is a geometrically, what is a picture. It is made of just planes. So just say one more definition. So polyhedron is a solid body whose surface consists of a number of polygons, faces, subject to the two conditions to exclude some abnormal cases. So like in polygons, I said such type of thing is not possible. This is not possible. This is not possible. This is not possible. So we exclude some conditions, and then we form a polyhedron using just planes, or you can say just polygons. Using polygons, we can using the polygonal faces, we can construct some object, and we'll call them as a polyhedron. And we define some terms called faces. So polygon forming a polyhedron are known as its face. And what are the edges? Line segments which is common between two polygons, they are called as edges. And the vertices of polygons are called as vertices. So for example, this is not example of polyhedron. Why? Because it is not made of by planes. But this is example of polyhedron. This is not an example of polyhedron. This is example of polyhedron. This is example of polyhedron. This is all are except this and this. So now again, like as before, we defined what is called a regular polyhedron. So in we have seen that regular means everything should be the same. So regular polyhedron is a polyhedron which is made of same regular polygons assembled in the way around each vertex. In the same way around each vertex. What it means? So for example, in this picture, you see this cube. So cube is made by basically squares. So if you take a square and join them along the edges, you can construct some object which is called, which is by definition is a regular. Why not this object is a regular? If you see, this is made by, of course, polygons, but this polygon has a four side, which is a square or rectangle, but other face is triangle. So both faces are different. So if faces are different, then we do not include them in as a regular. And to denote the regular polyhedron, so like in a regular polygon case, we have seen that if I fix a number or I have fixed a side of a polygon, then there is a one and only one polygon. So similarly here also, if there exists a regular polyhedron, then based on the number P and Q, there are only one regular polyhedron. And how to define them? To define them, I use a symbol which I say form of the regular polyhedron and denoted by P and Q, where P is a number of sides. 1 minute. Where P is the number of sides of each faces and Q is the number of faces meeting at each vertex. Now some more definition. I will say a convex polyhedron is a polyhedron for which a line connecting to any 2 points on the surface always lie in the interior or boundary of the polyhedron. So basically convex polyhedron is nothing but if you fix points in a R3 and take their convex hull, then exactly this gives you a complex convex polyhedron. So for example, of course, this is an example of a polyhedron. It is not a regular polyhedron. Why? Because it is made by different faces, different type of faces. First thing. Second, it is not a convex also. Why? Because if I pick 2 points on this polyhedron, like this one and this one, then line joining to these 2 points, there are many points which are not inside our boundary of this polyhedron. So this type of polyhedron are coarse polyhedron, but they are not convex, and of course not a regular. Similarly, this is also example of polyhedron. And how I made them? Just I cut many pieces and then joined them. Then I got this object, which I, by definition, is a polyhedron, but it is not a regular and not a convex. Why? Again, same argument. If I pick this point, I pick this point, then the line joining these 2 points are not inside this polyhedron. There are some more example of regular polyhedron. This you can see this is a regular polyhedron, but again this is not a convex. And these are also example of regular polyhedron which are always convex. Easily you can see if you pick any 2 points on these surfaces. So you have 5, 6 example I have given. All are actually convex, but one is not a regular. This one is not a regular. So some more definition. What I mean by Platonic solids. A convex regular polyhedron in R3 is called as a Platonic solid. So we are interested only in Platonic solids, and these are this. So except one. So what is nice with this Platonic solid? Before going to this, I will state one theorem of Euler, and then I will say more about the Platonic solids. So far, any question in definition or anything? No question. No. Okay. So related to this polyhedron, I am going to state one theorem of Euler's. So before stating the theorem, I have to define some terms. So a shape is said to be a simple if it has no holes. What is the meaning of this? So for example, in this picture, this has a hole. So that's why this is not a simple. a poly, even of course simple of shape. Even it is not a polyhedron, but it is not a simple object also because it has a hole. So what it mean by having hole and not having hole? So it means that for a polygon, it means that every closed curve in for poly here typo is there, that every closed curve in the interior can be shrink to the point. So like that, suppose I take suppose I take something like this, some object like this, and I remove one point inside that. Then now I ask you, can I shrink this any curve on this object? Suppose this is a curve. Can I shrink it to a point? So answer is no. I cannot do, never do. Why? Because if I shrink to a point, then this point is not there. So it will accumulate here. Even if I want to try, okay, I will stretch this like this, and then try to move. But if you want to cross, then you have to cross from this point. And this point is not here. So such type of objects are not simple.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, how would you define the word shape? Because in the
Say
theorem,
just some subset inside the R3. Some object.
subset inside
R3. So of
R3.
course we can talk about Rn, but here I'm just saying R3 or R2.
Okay, okay. Any subset. Okay.
Just any subject. But we are interested only in polyhedrons and especially in platonic solid. That is our interest. But yes,
Okay.
we can talk about for anything. Okay?
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you.
So basically, I want to say that to apply this Euler theorem, I need, I cannot apply for any shape. I can apply for special shapes. And actually, in mathematics, later you will understand this type of shapes are called simply connected spaces. Okay? So maybe you have seen in complex analysis, you always take such type of space when you compute the Cauchy integral and such thing. But yes, don't go there. Let us come back to our original. Yes. So, yes. So Euler theorem says that if you take any polyhedra, which is simple, and if I denote by FEV the number of faces, edges, and vertices, then there is a very nice relationship between these numbers. And the relationship says that F minus E plus V is equals to 2. Now I am going to use this theorem and to prove the theorem that there are exactly 5 platonic solids. So in case of regular polygon, which are of course convex also, we have realized that whenever you fix a number, you can get a polygon, regular polygon, convex regular polygon. But this is not a case in R3. But R3 looks bigger than R2, of course, but there are only 5 regular convex polyhedron, which are called as a platonic solids. So I'm going to prove this. So I mentioned that whenever I talk about the regular polyhedra, then I say that I can determine, I can write them at their form. So suppose PQ be a form of any regular convex polyhedra, and you can say that which is a platonic solid. But there is no guarantee that they exist or not for every P and Q. But suppose they exist, then what is nice with them? Let us find out. So let F, E, and V denote the number of faces, edges, and vertices of a platonic solid. So now my proof is divided into following steps. So first step, you observe that since every face has P edges, what was the P? P was the number of face edges in the face, and face was the basically polygon. So if P edges, so there will be total PF edges because F is the number of all faces. So you get that this PF is equals to 2E. Why? Because whenever you join two face, then will be always one line common. So one edge is contributing into two faces. And that's why you get a PF is equals to 2E. Similarly, you can see that Q edges meet at every vertex. And such each edges connect two vertices, because whenever you take one edge, then it has a two vertex. So that's you get a QV equal to 2E. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put these values of F and V in term of E here in Euler theorem, Euler formula, theorem, whatever. So I'm putting here. So after putting this, I got this. E, I can take a common. 1 by P minus 1 by 2 plus 1 by Q is strictly greater than G. Since E is a positive integer, so we get 1 by P is strictly greater than 1 by 2 minus 1 by Q. Again, recall that whenever you want to make a polyhedron, then can you take a polygon with one edge? No. Whenever you want to make a polygon, then you need at least 3 edges. Otherwise, it will not be a closed. For example, you know, this is not a polygon. So you need at least 3 edges. So that's why P is greater than equals to 3. Q is greater than equals to 3. Why? Because vertices will be always greater than equals to 3. Because to make a polyhedra, suppose you take a 2 faces. So it will not be a closed or something solid. So that's why you allow this 2 condition. And if I put this 2 condition here, then actually I get that 3 is always less than equals to P is less than equals to 6. So now depending on the choice of P, I will try to find out what is the value of Q. So let us fix P equal to 3. So if I fix P equal to 3, I put here, then I will get 1 by 3 plus 1 by Q minus 1 by 2 is strictly greater than 0. And hence 1 by Q is strictly greater than 1 by 6. But I know Q is greater than equals to 3. So these are the only possibility for Q equal to based on P equal to 3. So now again, suppose P equal to 4, then it gives you the possibility only Q equal to 3. And again I assume that P equal to 5, then I get only possibility that Q equal to 3. So in this way you got the possibility 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 5, 4, 3, and 5, 3. So Euler formula forces you that if your polyhedron is a convex and regular, then only possible values of P and Q is this. So it says that there exists at most 5 regular convex regular polyhedron. Now I want to prove that it is exactly 5, then corresponding to each number, I will give you 5 convex regular polyhedron. So these are like that. So if I take 4 edges, 4 vertices, 6 edges and 4 faces, and the type of polyhedron is 3, 3, then this polyhedron is nothing but tetrahedron. Similarly, if type is 4, 3, then this polyhedron is a hexahedron. And if type is 3, 4, then I get octahedron, and similarly other. And how they look in picture you have already seen, but now we have some nice picture again. Yes. So corresponding to all 5 value of possible value of PQ, you have these 5 Platonic solids. which satisfies all conditions for convex regular polyhedron. So in first step, I proved that there are at most 5. Now I have given you example by explicitly what are they 5, and they are like this. Now here you can see I am writing them as a fire, air, earth, water, and ether. So actually, when in geometry they found this object, then there were many philosophers like Pluto and many others, Kepler and other people. So they have tried to see these 5 objects in different point of view. And in Pluto basically associated this 5 object. Actually, he wrote that that Earth was actually associated with the cube, air with the octahedron, water with the icosahedron, and fire with the tetrahedron. And about the 5th Platonic solid, which is the dodecahedron, he said that maybe it is related to God, who used for arranging whatever, and something holy element, and which is for God, which sorry, what to say. Fifth element he associated with the God, and he said that maybe God is using to make a heavens and other thing for to use, and he used 5th element, which is basically dodecahedron. So this is just a philosophy, and that's why you can say that these 5 objects were very popular in many other point of view, and they are relating with the philosophy and other things. But as a mathematicians, we will try to see why they are very important for us and what nice thing they give. First nice thing we observe that R3 is very big, whole world space is there, but still there are only 5 convex regular polyhedrons. Now in group theory, we will try to associate with the these 5 objects with some subgroups of some special group that is called a rotation group, and that is our goal to prove that the finite subgroup of SO3 is related to the symmetry group of these 5 objects. But before talking symmetry group, I have to define what is meant by symmetry group of any object. So now move a little bit and concentrate. Aim is that now I want to define what is meant by the symmetry group of any object in R2, R3, and R. So for that we have to do little bit, and mathematically let us try to define. So far you have any question? If there is no question, so now I'm changing little bit, but aim is to define what is mean by symmetry group of any object in R2, R3, and Rn. So for that, let us come back, and what I am saying that what is mean by distance preserving map. Since Siddharth has already defined what is called a metric space, so just I am using it, and then after giving definition, I will forget it because I don't need it. But he has defined, so I am taking his definition and trying to define isometry in more general setup. So let X and Y be metric spaces with matrix dx and dy. So a map phi from X to Y is called and distance preserving if for any AB in X we have this property dy of phi A phi B is same as dx of AB. It means distance between A and B is same as the distance between phi A and phi B. It is very easy to check that any distance preserving map is actually an injective map. Why? Suppose phi A is equals to phi B. So it means the distance of phi A and phi B is same, and it means it is 0. So this means distance of A and B is also 0. And the property of matrix is that whenever you have a distance of 2 points 0, it means points are. So now some more nice property about the distance preserving map. Let x, y and z be metric spaces with metric dx, dy and dz respectively. And also let phi x to y and psi y to z are the distance preserving maps. Then nice thing is that if I construct the composition of these two maps, which is psi composed with psi composed with phi from x to z, then it is also a distance preserving map, which is very easy to check. How? Let us compute what is dz of psi composed with phi a and psi composed with phi b. So basically, what is the distance between the image of a and b under the map psi and phi? So this I can write them as a psi of phi a and phi b. Why? Because, and now I know the map psi is the distance preserving. So the image distance of phi a and phi b is exactly same as the distance of psi composed with phi a, psi composed with phi b. So I can write this distance of this is equals to distance of phi a, phi b with respect to metric d. Again, I can use that phi is actually distance preserving map. So this distance is same as distance of a and b. So now I will leave this definition and I will come to in some special case. So before coming this, let us recall some standard definitions. So what is mean by standard inner product, norm and distance on Rn? So we know that if you have a two vector, then I can represent them as a tuple. So suppose V and W are two vectors in Rn, then I can write them as a V1, V2, Vn and W1, W2, W. So if I write them like that, then I can define something called dot product, or you can say inner product, which is nothing but just a product of coordinates y's and their sum. So it is basically VIWI, where sum of VIWI, where I is varying from 1 to n. And the norm of vector is basically defined as the inner product of V with itself and square root of that, which is nothing but the square root of V1 square plus V2 square plus dot 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 plus Vn square. And using this norm, it is very easy to define a metric, and the metric is basically dVW. The distance between V and W is basically norm of V minus W, which you can write as a V minus W power 1 by 2. Some typo. So there is some exercise which I need, that is also part of your tutorial problem set. So if I take, so far any question related to this distance preserving map?
No, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
No, sir.
So exercise, that is very important and crucial exercise to prove some big theorem. Exercise is that if I fix a basis of Rn, suppose W1, W2, Wn is a basis of Rn, and I take any vector V in Rn with the property that V, inner product of V with each element of a basis is 0, then it implies that actually the vector is 0. And second exercise is that corresponding to any matrix, I can talk about its transpose matrix, where A power T denote the transpose of this matrix. So if you compute the inner product A transpose AB comma W, then it is exactly same as the inner product of AB AW, and which is same as the inner product of B A transpose A W. Very simple proof, nothing to do, just we can write left hand side and right hand side, and we can say both are. At least we don't need too much thing, because if we are working in 2 cross 2 and 3 cross 3, so by hand we can calculate. Otherwise, we need some more technique. So now again come back to some more setup. So in this, whatever I'm going to talk today and tomorrow, I will concentrate on Rn, and I will discuss the distance preserving map basically from Rn to Rn. And whenever we want to talk about the distance preserving map, then we have to specify what is a matrix. So I am here taking a standard Euclidean matrix, and in that matrix, I can say that an isometry of Rn is basically a map H from Rn to Rn with the property that norm of HV minus HW is same as V minus W for any 2 point in R. So hope the isometry of Rn is now clear to you. Isometry of Rn is nothing but a map H from Rn to Rn with the property that the norm of HV minus HW is same as norm of V minus W. For example, identity map is always a nice example for isometry, but more example you have already seen in your first lecture, in my first lecture, that is translation, reflection, rotation, glide reflection, all were the example of isometry. Now you can think, okay, so we started to give example of symmetry on first lecture, and we thought, okay, it look like a symmetry, believe that it is a symmetry. Now I have defined isometry, and then I got all objects which we have seen as a symmetry, they are an example of isometry. So now question you can ask that these are the examples of isometry in case at least we have seen in the plane. What can we say about the other isometries of R2? What are the other isometry except from translation, reflection, rotation, and glide reflection? So now we soon see some remarkable theorem which will tell us that they are the only one and we don't get more than that. So before that, some more observation. If I take any isometry of Rn, then I can write them as a composition of translation and some isometry K. So how can I do this? So I can define TV is equal to V plus H0. What it is saying? It is basically a translation. It is sending a vector V to V plus H0. And now I define KV is equal to HV minus H0. Then, of course, it is easy to see that HV is equals to KV plus H0, which is nothing but T composed with KV. Now, I have to prove that K is actually an isometry, which is very obvious. Why? Because if you take a norm of KV minus KW, then it is nothing but norm of HV minus H0, and here also H0 will come, so it will cancel and you will get this. But you have started with H isometry, so this is equals to norm of V minus W. So hence K is actually isometry, and you can write this. So this is a very easy theorem. So it tells you that any isometry can be written as a composition of translation and another isometry K such that K0 is equals to 0, which is very obvious in this. Now we have a very nice theorem which says that for a function h from Rn to Rn, these following statements are the equivalent. So what is it saying? It is saying that suppose H is an isometry and H0 is equals to 0. Suppose H is preserves inner product, that means inner product of HV with HW is same as the inner product of V and W. And third statement says that H is linear and the matrix A such that HV is written as AV for all V belong in RL satisfies this A transpose is equal to identity, and similarly A transpose A is equal to. So before going in proof, if you have any question, you can ask me. It is saying that any function which is isometry and fixing a 0, then it is actually a linear map. So that is very remarkable. From beginning, we know isometry was just a distance preserving map, which was just as a set map and it was fixing a distance. Now we saw that if it fixes a 0, then actually it is a linear map. It is very nice map. Any question? No. So let us go to prove this theorem. So note that for any V in Rn, the norm of V square was just inner product V and V. So very simple proof. We just follow steps carefully. So now first assume that H is an isometry and H0 is equals to 0. Now I will prove that 1 implies 2. So to prove that 2, I have to prove that this inner product preserving property of H. So how to prove this? So now think this, because H is isometry, norm of HV minus HW is equals to norm of V minus W. Now, when W is equals to 0, then I will get HV minus H0. But H0 is 0, so I get a basically norm of HV. And again, I can take a square and I can write this norm as a inner product HV comma HV, which is same as norm of HV square, which is same as norm of V square, which is same as norm of V and V. So we realize that if at least H is preserving the image, at least as this as an inner product of HV with itself is preserved. Now take this and square it and write them as an inner product. So I will get inner product of HV minus HW with itself is same as the inner product of V minus W with itself. Now expand these two terms, both sides, by the property of inner product. Then I can get inner product of HV is with HV minus 2 times of inner product of HV with HW plus inner product of HW with HW. And again here I will get it the same, inner product of V with V minus 2 times of inner product of V with W plus inner product of W with X. Now from here I know the inner product of HV and HV for every V is same as the inner product of VB. So these terms will cancel. This will cancel this one, this will cancel this one, and thus we obtain this is equals to this. So we proved that 1 implies 2. Now our aim is to prove that 2 implies 2. So 2 says that inner product is preserved. Now my claim is that the map is actually linear, and if I write them as a HV is equal to AV, then this matrix A is satisfying this property. Okay. So first is given at inner product of HV with HW is same as the inner product of V and W. So now observe that what is the norm of H0 square, which is same as the inner product of H0 with the H0. But again using this property, this inner product is same as this, and norm of 0 square is same as 0. So this, since norm of this is 0, and this forces that H0 is equal to 0. Now I will prove that H is linear. So how to prove that linear? To prove linear, I have to show that it is linear with respect to addition, and scalar multiplication also will be here and for this map. So to start with, let E1, E2 and En are the standard be the standard basis of R. Now look this inner product HEI with HEJ. This inner product is same as inner product of EI with EJ because of this property. But E1, E2, En are the standard basis, means this EI is just nothing but 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, ith place. So we know this is orthonormal actually basis. These vectors are orthonormal vectors. So this product is basically delta ij, where delta ij is equal to 0 if I is not equal to j, and if is 1 if I is equal to j. So it forces that actually these vectors HE1, HE2 and HEN is also an orthonormal basis of R. Now calculate this HV plus W comma HW. Again, by the property, I know this is same as the inner product of V plus W comma N. Now calculate this term. Inner product of HV plus HW with HU. I can expand, I can get HV, HU, HW, HU. Again, applying the this HV, HU is same as VU, and HW, HU is same as WU. And again, I get a V plus W, inner product of V plus W with U. And now both sides you look, this is same as this one. So this forces that this is equal to this. So this inner product is same as this inner product for every U in R. Now take U is equal to E1, E2, En, then I get that same inner product, and again using our exercise, which I have just mentioned in beginning, that whenever you have a basis and one inner product with respect to this basis is 0, then this vector is 0. So what I can do, I can just take this minus this. Just taking this side, I can make it minus, and then I can get a 0. It forces that HV plus W minus HV plus HW is 0, and hence HV plus W is equals to HV plus HW. Similarly, by same idea, I can calculate the inner product of HCV with HU, which is same as CV comma W, because H preserves inner product. And again, you can use this property of inner product, and you can write like this. And similarly, by various choice of U as E1, E2, En, I get this. So now I have proved that actually H is a linear net. Now I want to prove that the A, if I write H is equal to AV, then A has this property. So to get this, look at this. So if HV is equal to AV, then my aim is to show that A transpose is equal to identity. Now you calculate what is AV AW. By the given assumption, AV AW is same as inner product of V and W. This is also part of exercise, that this inner product is same as this one, and hence you get that inner product of A transpose AV with W is same as the inner product of V and W. And again, using first exercise, I can conclude that A transpose A is equals to. Now I want to prove that third implies 1, which is again not very difficult. Just I can calculate what is the norm of HV minus HW. Again, this norm is same as the norm of A, V minus W, because I can write HV is equal to AV. And this is equals to again the inner product of AV minus W with inner product of, with AV minus W. And again, I taking A here, I will get A transpose A is equal to V minus W, inner product inner product of A transpose A V minus W with V minus W, which is again, since inner product preserved, so I will get a V minus W, and which is a norm of, because this is identity. No, this is identity. It is given by in 3. Because of 3, this is identity, so I get this, and hence this is equals to norm of V minus. So now I have proved that 1 implies 2, 2 implies 3, and 3 implies 1. So it means all are equivalent. So now some corollary. It says that let H from Rn to Rn be an isometry, then H has an inverse which is also an isometry, and two isometries of Rn that have the same values at 0 and on any basis of Rn, then they are equal. So now we have already seen that the composition of isometry is isometry, and if I consider the set of isometry, then I can talk about the inverse with respect to the composition. So now your question is that, first, does inverse exist? Theorem is corollary saying yes, inverse exists as a map. Now again corollary is saying that this inverse is actually a isometry, and hence it is a inverse in the sense of set of isometries of R2 with respect to the composition. So how to prove that? Not very difficult. Again, by the above theorem, I can write HV as a composition of translation and another isometry K, such that K0 is equals to 0. So in that case, HV will be KV plus H0, where K is an isometry of Rn fixing 0, and PV is equal to V plus H0, which is actually a translation. Now, again applying the theorem, I know that since K is isometry and K0 is 0, K is isometry and K0 is 0. So by above theorem, KV is written as AV. So this was the theorem. H is isometry and H0 is equal to 0. So K is isometry and K0 is 0. So I can write K is equal to AV for some A matrix with the property that A transpose is equal to identity and A transpose A is equal to same. A transpose is equals to A transpose A, which is same as identity. Now it is very clear that A transpose is basically inverse of A. So now I am defining what is K inverse of V, which is nothing but A transpose T V, which is the inverse of K. And now I am defining inverse of H as all vector V going to A transpose V minus H0. My claim is that this function H inverse is the inverse of H, and of course it is a isometry. So first I will check that it is an isometry. So how to check? So again compute the norm of H inverse V minus H inverse W. By putting the value of H inverse, I get this, and again by solving this, I got A transpose B minus norm of A transpose B minus W, which is can be written as an inner product form like this, and which is written like this. But we know the property of A transpose is identity, so it gives you norm of B minus W. So we proved that actually H inverse is isometry. Now my claim is that actually it is a inverse. Inverse means it is also a bijective map. If H is a bijective, then of course we get an inverse. So to show that it is a bijective, I want to show that this H inverse is actually inverse. So enough to show that the composition H with H inverse is identity, and composition of H inverse with H is identity, which is not very difficult to check. Just put the value, I get this both sides as a identity. So hence H is actually bijective and inverse exists, and this inverse is exactly this, and again we have proved already that it is an isometry. So it means that first part is over. H has an inverse, which is also an isometry. Now, my claim is that if I have a two isometry which agree on 0 and any basis of Rn, then they are actually same. So I know if H1 and H2 are two isometry, then I can define K1 and K2 like this, where K1 and K2s are isometry and fixing a 0. So since it is isometry and fixing a 0, it means it is a linear. And we know that two linear map which agree on a basis, then they are always same. So it forces that K1 is equal to K2. Now H1V minus H10 is same as H2V minus H20 because they are K1 and K2. So again cancelling H1, H0 and H20, I got that H1 is equal to H2. So now I have a picture of all isometries of Rn. And picture wise you can see this is a theorem. If for any A belonging ONR, what is ONR? It is basically set of all orthogonal matrices of n cross n orthogonal, all n cross n orthogonal matrices with the property that A transpose is equal to identity, which is also same as A transpose is equal to identity. We know them as they are called as a orthogonal matrices. So if we take any orthogonal matrix and any vector in Rn, this function defined like that, any V is going to AB plus W, which is composition of TW with A, is actually an isometry. And by previous theorem, if it is isometry, if I have any isometry, then it will be of this form. So this theorem tells you that what are the isometry? All isometry comes from basically orthogonal matrices and a point of, and we write them, as I said, we denote them like this, isometries of Rn. This is a set which denote the set of all isometries of Rn, and we use a symbol which we call cis symbol to denote an isometry A by W. So what is the meaning of this? This will denote a map actually HAW. And with respect to this symbol, it is very nice to define the composition of two maps, and it will be like this. And what is mean by this, which is you can check from here directly, which is not very difficult. And in that symbol case, I can easily write what is identity, what is the inverse of this map, and thus we see that the set of all isometries of Rn forms a group, and that is called as the isometry group of Rn, and which is nothing but ON and Rn. So any matrix and product with Rn you can see. And now look what is the isometry group of R. So to check that, the isometries of R are nothing but just these two functions. These are the translation, because O1R is just plus minus 1 in case of n is equal to 1. So all isometries are the form Hx is equal to x plus c and Hx is equal to minus x plus c. Now we will discuss what are the isometry in R2. So in R2, corresponding the choice of the determinant of this matrix, we get different isometries. So whenever you have a is equal to identity and W 0, then we get an identity. When A is equal to identity and W is not 0, then we get non-zero translation maps, which are the isometry of R2. When determinant of A is equal to 1 and A is not equal to identity, then this gives you example of rotations. And when determinant of A is equal to minus 1 and AW is equal to minus W, then it gives you an example of reflection. And similarly, determinant A is equal to minus 1 and AW is not equal to minus W, then it gives you an example of blind reflection. And you know, any isometries of this type and A satisfies this, then it directly implies that determinant of A is equal to determinant of A adjoint is equal to determinant of identity. But determinant of identity is 1, so it forces that determinant of A is either 1 or minus 1. So based on determinant of A is equal to 1 and minus 1, these are the only possible choice. So now whatever I started, now I have proved that with respect to my new definition, these are the only possible isometries of. So far, any question? I just need 3-4 minutes. Any question?
No, sir. Okay.
Yes. So now I will just define my last definition of today's lecture. What is mean by symmetry group of any geometric object? So let X be any non-empty subset of Rn, and consider the subset of Sx, which is all isometries of Rn, which fixes this subset capital X. X is equals to X. Then it is not very difficult to check that actually this set is a subgroup of isometry subgroup of R. And this set group I will denote as a symmetry subgroup of X. So for example, what is the symmetry group of just a point in R2? And for example, you take this point as a origin. So I know any symmetry group of R2 is of the form HV is equals to AV plus some vector T. But this set is 0, so it means you want all H such that H0 is equals to 0. So it forces that A0 plus T is equal to 0. So, but T is non-zero, then it is not possible. So it forces that T should be 0 and A0, because A0 is always 0 because it is a linear map. So A0 is 0, so this implies that T is 0. So now HV is nothing but AV, and where A varying over all matrices O2. So set of all orthogonal matrices of type 2 cross 2 is a basically symmetry group of this set X, which has only one. So there are some more exercises which you can in the tutorial. Now I will stop my today's lecture. So if you have any question, you can ask.
Any queries from participant side? Okay, I think there is no queries. So let us thank Dr. Singh on behalf of all the participants. I would like to extend sincere thanks to Dr. Singh, and let us clap for Dr. Singh. We really enjoyed your way of explanation that you have presented today, and you have nicely connected the things, geometry things to the God, to the heaven, and philosophy too. So very unique way of your explanation. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, so now.
Yeah, okay, let us meet tomorrow. Okay.
Yes, okay. Thanks. Bye.